Hello there, and welcome to a brand new episode of the Terrace Scottish Football Podcast. My name is Craig Telfer, and right now I am joined by my close associate, Shaughan McGuigan.
Hello there.
And you know what happens when the Pauline Parker and Juliet Hume of the Terrace get together. That's right, we are going to meet at a Christchurch Girls' High School in the late 1940s. We will form a very deep and very intense friendship, invent our own personal religion in Fantasyland, and when one of her mothers threatens to break up the friendship, we'll lead her to a wooded area and bludgeon her to death with a brick inside an old stocking. And while our story is being adapted into the 1994 hit movie Heavenly Creatures, directed by Peter Jackson and starring Kate Winslet and Melanie Lynskey, we might get the chance to talk about some lower league Scottish football. You seen Heavenly Creatures?
Yes, I have.
Yeah, it's a very, very good movie and very fitting. Who would you be, the Kate Winslet or the Melanie Lynskey of the two?
Maybe Lewinsky, I think.
Okay, that's fine. I'm happy to be the Kate Winslet. She's both of them very, very strong acting careers. Kate Winslet's kids are now doing stuff for Netflix, but not nepo babies, according to her. Not nepo babies.
I must admit, I'm not entirely au fait with our like children's acting.
Okay, well, you know something, man? That's your homework for next time, to go on Kate Winslet's Wikipedia page, read it in depth, and then we can have a discussion about her lineage and what it means for the future of streaming services. But nevertheless, Shaughan and I are back once again to deliver you a patented 3-game podcast and a lot more, to be honest, a lot to get through this week. We'll be analysing the big games from the Championship, League 1 and League 2, as well as anything else that's caught our eye. And believe me, a lot has caught my eye. My eye is like a big trawler's net, and Scottish football is the North Sea. So, Shaughan, everything okay?
Very good, yes. Yourself?
Yeah, fine. Just nothing really interesting to inform you about since I last saw you. I am back watching.
You've had a Christmas night out?
Oh, yes, of course, I had a Christmas night out. It was fine. The Christmas night out was fine. Yes, probably the highlight was we went to a colleague's flat beforehand before going round to the Corinthian. And that was probably the high point of it. That was a lot of fun. But everyone looked fantastic, not just at the flat party, but at the subsequent event itself. Everyone had put a lot of effort into it. And that's great to see. Everyone looking their best.
And no, I suppose no crises after you went to the night out.
No. Everything was above board. There was a girl sitting next to me. I finished some of her dinner, and in my drunken stupor, I went to the McDonald's in Trongate to have a third dinner. So I feel like just this time of year, I'm sort of like gaining weight in real time. You know, sometimes you can put weight on and it catches up with you. I actually can feel it happening. You know, like the X-Files, when someone looks down at their arm and they can see something crawling under their skin. That's like me with just rolls of fat. And I can't say I care for it, Shaughan. I can't say I care for it. But listen, enough about my nights out, enough about my embarrassing body. We'll talk about the Championship. And now, Shaughan, you and I, we always try to mix things up when we do these podcasts. We've spoken about one team the previous week. We tried to leave them for probably a month or so before returning to them and discussing them. Although I appreciate there's somebody listening to this who's, why do you talk about Edinburgh City every week? And we go, that's different, of course. But events over the weekend, we simply have to return to an old favourite. And once again, we're going to be talking about Ross County, who probably turned in the worst performance of the SPFL season so far when they were demolished 6-0 by Raith Rovers at Starks Park. Scott Brown put the Rovers ahead early doors. Dylan Easton got the second from the penalty spot shortly afterwards, and Jai Rowe added a third before the interval. Easton got his second in Raith's fourth not long after the restart, and Paul Nizio and Jack Hamilton got the fifth and sixth later on. Now, when I saw this score coming in, I thought, that's definitely a sacking offence. You can't go to a team who doesn't score goals and a team who never beats you and get turned over 6-0. And sure enough, on Sunday morning, Tony Docherty and his assistant Callum Davidson left County by mutual consent. Their search for the third manager of the season is underway. But we'll come on and talk about County just shortly, because it was Dougie Imrie's first league win as the Rovers boss. They're in sixth place with 23 points and just within touching distance of the promotion playoffs. County, meanwhile, still bottom of the table with 12 points. And before we analyse this game, If you want to find out exactly what's going wrong at Ross County, please subscribe to the Patreon. We mention it every week. Craig Fowler did a very good podcast with John Maxwell, one of the best to ever do it, and some other guy. And get on it because they go really in deep about county season, so it really is worth listening to. But Shaughan, you were at Starks Park on Saturday. I popped hard when you said that you were going to this game. I thought we have to discuss this one. Tell me all about Raith Rovers 6, Ross County 0.
It's funny, I did not see this coming at all. And in fact, I actually thought that Raith Rovers might lose. There was just something about the fact that we, as a club, they've barely had a shot at goal for about maybe 2 months now. The record against Ross County is dreadful. So I must admit, I did not have any. I certainly didn't have any kind of hopes in going into this one. So there was a part of me that thought, will I even attend this game? But thankfully I did. 6-0, didn't see it coming at all. And as much as it's funny that there was a part of me where I was like, I went to 1-0, 2-0, 3-0, even 4-0. But the fact that I think there is a psychological thing because of the Dumbarton game, which must have been about 10 years ago, then the Hamilton game when we went 3-0 up and then 4-0 up. There is something about that wasn't quite comfortable, even though Ross County were so poor in this game. However, regardless, it was from a Raith perspective really good, but it's difficult. It's difficult because Ross County were so poor. So it's how good were Raith when Ross County were so poor?
I think that's a really interesting way to look at it. I don't know if they should, just because County were very bad, and we can have a breakdown of their performance and look at the goals they conceded. Just because they were poor, you force them to look bad because of your application desire. I think a lot of the time, if you want something more, you can make good players look bad. But although that you've got to contextualise by saying that County haven't looked good all season. I'll get just an example of that, like how you can make a team look bad. The first goal for Scott Brown, where he plays the ball out. Am I right in saying he plays the ball out to Paul McMullen, and the Raith Rovers highlights swing round into the penalty box. The ball goes in to Jack Hamilton, who nudges it towards the penalty spot, and then Scott Brown comes crashing from out of frame into the penalty spot to finish from close range. And there's no one in a County jersey who, one, follows his run into the box to at least try to knock him off balance or get a block in. And I think is it Dylan Smith, the central defender, just doesn't seem to be aware of what's coming in front of him. It's real half-hearted clearance. So I think that it's something that Tony Docherty spoke about in his final post-match interview as the Ross County boss. But just that application, that desire was badly missing from his team's performance, and Raith were able to take full advantage.
It's funny because Tony Docherty talked about his team being inept and a desire. And it's funny, I don't really see when you think about, and maybe you saw it when it comes to Swift. Like Swift's final days at Stenhousemuir, or maybe Raith Rovers' final days under Barry Robson. I'm not entirely sure I buy into the suggestion that players have chucked it, but I do think that players maybe they don't track back as hard as they did 2 months previous, or maybe they don't press the opponent as much as they did 2 months previous. I think that Ross County's performance on Saturday was beyond that. It very much felt like that they had checked out. Not everybody, but it very much felt like maybe 2, 3, 4, 5 players had kind of checked out. And that was very much the issue on Saturday.
I think that if there was a perfect example of that, would be the final goal at 6-0. Now, I appreciate that when you're losing 5-0 away from home, you just want the game over and done with. You want to get up the road. But I always imagine there's still a degree of professional pride that it doesn't get to 6. I think in terms of numbers, 5 is a good strong number. But anything above that, I mean, like any defeats, there's a degree of embarrassment that comes with it. But then when you get into the realms of like, you never really tend to see 6 goals scored against you, 7 goals scored against you. When it goes beyond 5, that's when it's like, right, we just have to stop here and stop them scoring. But with Jordan Docherty, he carries the ball from inside his own half. It's like he's, you know, you go Christmas shopping and you just, right, I just need to get a couple of items off these aisles here. And you know exactly where you're going. So you're just like skipping past everyone just to grab what you need and head off. That was him like going through the Ross County midfield there. It was just so half-hearted. No one really, again, trying to put him off his stride or nudge him, and he takes the shot. Trevor Carson saves it, and it falls very favourably for Jack Hamilton to bundle home. But the game was bookended by 2 goals that just really summed up County's ineptitude. But again, we can come on and break down the constituent parts of County just shortly. But I'd like to focus on Raith Rovers, as we mentioned there, Shaughan. Dougie Emery's first win in charge of the Rovers. Who were the standout players in this game? It looked as though guys like McMullen had a good game, Dylan Easton had a good game, Scott Brown had a good game.
And I think what is encouraging is there was a number of players who had maybe their best ever performances in a Raith jersey. So Paul McMullen did. Like, I think he might have been involved in 3 or 4 goals. Certainly 3, maybe 4. Jack Hamilton kind of ruffled a few feathers kind of up top. Now, he's not done that for maybe 18 months or so. I would say Jordan Docherty has been a kind of half decent right back. He was played in the middle of park. Now, it's interesting in terms of when you think of like kind of good Raith Rovers central midfielders over the last maybe 3 or 4 years. It's been Regan Henry or Brad Spencer or Sam Stan.
Uh-huh.
Based on Saturday, and it's a very, very small sample, Jordan Docherty could be in that kind of
right
company. Like he was so good. Case. However, you do have to add every single thing. every caveat that I've suggested is because Ross County were so poor. Like there was no. Like everything was so easy. That's what I'm trying to say. Like as good as Raith Rovers were, Ross County were terrible.
It makes it quite a difficult game to try and analyse then, because I think the game we're going to talk about next, it's Inverness Caledonian Thistle 4 Hamilton Academical. Now, I think that game's probably going to be quite similar in terms of the way we analyse it. Loads of goals, but just so completely one-sided. It's very difficult to come up with any good debating points, as it were, for this. I suppose the other thing I really liked about this, there were 2 very, very good goals that the Rovers scored. The third goal and the fourth goal. The third goal, quite a weak clearance out the back from Connor Randall, and it just breaks very nicely into Gyro's path, controls it, and then just arrows it into the bottom corner for 25 yards. The ball is just struck, doesn't move in the air, it is just arrowed, just a perfect straight line into the corner.
Like Gyro's an interesting topic, I suppose, because he was ultimately recruited as a right back, joining with Barry Robson, played him as a right back, and then almost immediately jettisoned him out the team. And that has been the case. And nobody really was keen to get him back in. And in fact, I think most Raith fans were like, right, well, maybe we could get rid of him in January. Worst case scenario, he'll be a sub and he'll leave in the summer. But actually, scored the hat-trick against Hamilton, albeit Hamilton reserves ultimately. Played right back again in this kind of weird setup that Dougie Emery decided to play, which totally worked. But by goodness, his finish was absolutely fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
And suddenly it's like, well, actually, maybe this right back that everybody had written off, that Barry Robson had written off, might actually be okay for the rest of the season, but difficult to say.
Again, everything's got to be viewed through the prism that Ross County weren't very good. But you can't take away from the calibre of the finish. That's just a really, really well struck goal. Doesn't matter who you're playing against. Could be Ross County B. It would still be a very nice goal. And we mentioned the fourth goal there. I thought this was a great team goal. A really nice round the corner pass from Jack Hamilton and McMullen touch. Ball across the face of goal. Really nice finish for Dylan Easton there.
Yeah. Again, Paul McMullen's best performance by a mile. And it's interesting in terms of, and I know, like we've said it before, in terms of Dougie Imrie, like the fact that he can just get performances from players. Now, it might just be, maybe it's a coincidence, but the fact that you have J. Rowe probably put in his best performance for Raith, Paul McMullen doing the same, Jack Hamilton putting in his best performance for the last maybe kind of 18 months. Like, that's quite unusual. Like, and maybe it's just a coincidence, but I do find it quite interesting that all these players are putting in their best performances under Dougie Imrie over the last kind of 2 or 3 weeks. It's quite encouraging.
I was going to ask what you've made of Imrie so far then. He's obviously been able to get an extra 10-15% out players that Barry Robson couldn't, and we mentioned that the team are just beginning to put themselves into contention for maybe like 4th place, maybe 3rd place for the promotion. Are things better under Dougie Imrie than they were under Robson? Yes,
but I don't want to get like ahead of myself. So in terms of like the games that he's been in charge of so far, so Alloa won narrowly, but looked decent. Hamilton in the Challenge Cup, but ultimately they played their kind of youth side. Like Ross County was that was the game. But I didn't expect to see such a performance or such a result. It was interesting in terms of, so Dougie Imrie mentioned that ultimately what he played on Saturday was what he played when Morton went up to Ross County, went up to Dingwall.
Oh, he beat him 3-0, didn't he?
So it was interesting in terms of that's how he felt that he could beat Ross County. Now that's, you have to praise Dougie Imrie for that. I suppose you have to also say how good Tony Docherty, if he's already came up against that tactic, like he's already aware of it. And the fact that he couldn't counter it, I suppose it doesn't look too good on like Tony Docherty. Regardless, I've been quite impressed with Dougie Imrie so far.
And Dougie Imrie in his post-match interview, I think that the guy interviewing him was at Davies, long-standing interviewer, quite like listening to him. He always seems to have a good rapport with the managers. But Davy Hancock, he's really trying to riz Dougie Imrie. I was saying, like, 6-0, Dougie, you must be absolutely delighted with that. And Dougie's like, most important thing was winning the game. Like, completely, you know, he's like, it was the most feet in the ground interview that I've seen. You know, I don't think he even smiles in it. Your team's just won 6-0. It's your first one as the manager. You played one of the league favourites off the park. So I just thought it was quite an interesting review. And I suppose that for him, you know, it's all about saying, like, I'm not interested in the adulation. My job is to go out and manage these players and make them as good as they can be. And I suppose I don't know if that makes him quite hard to take. I quite like Dougie Imrie, but you know, you compare him to, like, say, Scott Kelleher, for instance. We're coming and talk about him, but he's absolutely beaming with the fact that his team just stuck 4 goals past Hamilton and stretched their lead at the top of the table. Dougie Imrie turns in like one of the Raith Rovers' strongest performances. She's like, yeah, but that's what I get paid to do. That's no bother.
But he must be excited as well. Like, I appreciate that. I think it's kind of tucking how pleased he is inside. I suspect he's beaming as well.
Just imagine he just gets into the car and he's like grabbing the wheel and slapping the horn before he drives back up the road. Just that's it. Finally, he's been able to get it out of his system. But if it was a brilliant day for Raith Rovers, a very bad day for Ross County, and a bad day for Tony Docherty, a manager who just hasn't worked for him up at County. I mean, we look at his record there. I mean, 13 league games in charge of the club, 2 victories, 4 draws, 7 defeats, and losing at home to the likes of Arbroath and Queen's Park and Airdrieonians and Great Morton, 4 teams at the beginning of the season. I think we'd all have fancied to actually be the teams finishing 7th, 8th, 9th and 10th. And I'm going to think of the quote from the thick of it, where it's like, we sack you. I think it's something like, we sack you after like a month. It looks like we fucked up. We sack you after a year. It looks like you fucked up. But I think that with Docherty, I think this is, I think I've got a degree of sympathy for him, but by the same token, he was given a lot of advantages that other managers just couldn't get. He had a big squad there to work with, couldn't figure out the best way to utilise him, and unfortunately it's cost him his job there. So I think that just County, spoke about them on last week's show after they had been defeated by Airdrieonians, just there's a great big sucking hole there, and I think that every single person associated with the club is just like disappearing into it. I remember last week when we talked about Ross County, I was like, right, so they created chances, and maybe if they'd taken one of those chances, the game might have went differently against Airdrie. I didn't get that impression whatsoever against Raith Rovers. He mentioned, I can't remember exactly what he said. He said something like, "Oh well, we had as many shots at goal as Raith." Fine, in a general sense, maybe he did. But there was not, like, they finished 6-0, and it could have been 8, it could have been 9. I'm sure, like, the only time that they threatened, I think, was that Jordan White hit the crossbar at 2-0 down, and the rest of the chance said there's somebody has a like an overhead kick, but like Josh Ray just stands and collects it, so you can't really. I know it's a shot on target, but it's not like a proper chance. You're not working the goalkeeper. You know, Josh Ray's not having to think about that. You know. I do have sympathy for him, because I think there are people, there are players at Ross County who maybe don't necessarily want to be there, or maybe, how could I describe it? Maybe their circumstances have changed, or maybe it's they didn't expect to have to go up to Dingwall every single day, and that's. They aren't happy at that. I don't know how to describe it. Regardless, it's not worked out for. It's not worked out for Tony. So if they'd lost like maybe 1-0 or 2-0 on Saturday, I think he would still have been the manager. So it's not necessarily the defeat. I think it's the manner of the defeat that is cost him his job. Yeah, the scoreline was a sackable offence. I said that when I saw it coming on Saturday, but then when you actually see the highlights, you just think there's a group of players that just are not playing for the manager anymore. And I don't know what the answer is. Settled to you can't like sack 24 players and bring in. I mean, you could pay them all off and then bring in 24 players in January. That's a very difficult thing to do. I suppose that they are the club that are in the best position to get to the transfer window and then start turning the squad over. I'm sure that Roy McGregor and Stevie Ferguson, the chief executive, are already making moves to bring players in, let people go, whatever. But the next managerial appointment is going to be absolutely crucial. Just some of the names, Shaughan, we good to get your thoughts on that have been linked with the job. Barry Robson, John Rankin, John Hughes going back to the club, Ian Murray, Brian Graham, Stuart Kettlewell returning, David Gold at Arbroath is someone who's been mentioned. Not Colin Hamilton, interestingly enough, but David Gold's been mentioned. I'd be surprised about David Gold, because he seems to have like a good kind of business away from football. What you then need is somebody who is, I suppose, looking to get back into management and is free and is happy to move back up north. Honestly, I don't know. I'm not entirely sure. Yeah, it seems like a difficult job to go into as well, to try and turn things around and get as you mentioned, the big players whose noses are out of joint, maybe to try and bring them back on side and find out a way just to try and galvanise this team, because it's a horrendous performance. They've got a tough game coming up next as well, Shaughan. They're playing Arbroath and Dingwall.
I will say a draw, just because they've lost a manager, and I know they're like Arbroath are a part-time team, but we still keep thinking that surely their bubble will burst. But I'll say a draw.
I can see Arbroath winning this. I mean, Arbroath just beat Partick Thistle at the weekend. Partick Thistle were having a great time of it until they took on the Litty. So I'd fancy Arbroath to win this. I actually fancy Arbroath to beat most of the sides in that division. But speaking of Partick Thistle, they're taking on the Rovers at Firhill. You going along to that one?
Yes, I am. Should be a good game. It almost always is a good game at Firhill when it's Partick Raith. I actually think Partick Thistle will sneak this. It always seems to be a really good game. And as much as I've been impressed by Raith and wasn't overly impressed by Mark Wilson's post-match comments about how Arbroath is a farce, I still think that Partick will get the win here.
Is there anything to be said, Shaughan, about the Raith Rovers ultras who were photographed performing Nazi salutes while carrying a flag with SS written across the front outside I think it was Kirkcaldy Townhouse?
Yes, it was Kirkcaldy Townhouse. Just the fact that I'm glad that they'll never get back in again.
That's good. That's good. Yeah, were they the young team we've spoken about in the past who've been given quite a long leash and it got to the point that behaviour was just unacceptable?
Yes, exactly that.
No, if you thought they were going to turn the temperature down a little bit, just wait till you see what they got up to at the weekend. Yeah, so one man's been charged after the group. There's a lot of people there. I mean, to be fair, they had balaclavas on, so they're quite difficult to identify. The one person who pitches up without his balaclava on, and he's the one that has to carry the can for it. What a doofus. Before, Shaughan, we move away from the Championship, Airdrieonians, I think we should mention them. Their good form continues under Aaron Taylor-Sinclair. Defeated Greenock Morton 1-0 at Capello at the weekend, but the victory was perhaps overshadowed by a noteworthy post-match interview from Morton's interim manager, Billy Davies. Did you get a chance to listen to it?
Yes. I totally agree that Billy Davies it was a weird interview, and I totally get that. But, like, Morton were the better team. I could kind of understand where Billy Davies was coming from, but he just shouldn't have, he shouldn't have explained it like that, if that makes sense.
He says it 3 times in the space of 3 minutes. He says, I was expecting more from them about Airdrie. And the best line is, they'll be asking, how the hell did we win that game? And quite simply, how the hell did they win that game? Which is, his delivery for that was really good. But I mean, I'm not sure if Billy Davies is a viable long-term solution to what Morton are looking for. They had put us, I think when he had taken the job, they promised an update on the managerial situation. They were going to get to this game against Airdrie and there should be a bit more clarity about what the club were looking to do. They haven't been updated since. But I don't know if Davies is the right man, and certainly not after watching that interview.
I must admit, I didn't realise that. Apparently, he'd already mentioned that he didn't want to be the full-time manager at Morton, which is fair enough. I didn't know that. I just presumed he would be. So now, I suppose we're now in a position where he is very much the interim manager, but I haven't heard any kind of rumour as to who will be their kind of full-time manager.
Well, if you're Aaron Taylor-Sinclair, please sweep the underside of your car. Billy Davies has probably bugged it so he can track your movements. Funnily as well, just sticking with Billy Davies, earlier in the week he was on Gers TV with Sci Live. I don't know if you saw that.
Oh, I didn't, unfortunately.
It's a 70-minute interview. I didn't watch it, but fair play all the same. And just finally, Shaughan, before we move on from the Championship, you know this latest ongoing series we have of characters in EastEnders who look like lower league Scottish superstars? Previously, we had Bang Bang Darren Land looking like Bobby Beale. Then last week we had Cammy Blues looking like Oscar Branning. This week, if we can add Queen's Park attacker Tim Scott, looks like Jasmine Fisher.
Again, don't know, but I'll take your word for it.
Do tune in, you'll be like, oh my God, he is so right. He is so right. I wish I could do the side-by-sides I could show you here. Fowler, when you're editing this podcast, bring up side-by-sides just to help the viewer when they're watching this on YouTube. But we'll drop into League One and we'll continue the theme of talking about teams from the Highlands. We mentioned we're going to chat about this game. It is Inverness Caledonian Thistle 4, Hamilton Academical 0. Mitchell Robinson opened the scoring after the 3rd minute, and then Chanka Zimba got the second just before the interval. And Alfie Babbage netted the third 9 minutes after the restart. Before that, venerable old workhorse Billy Mackay grabbed the final goal of the game. Very good weekend for Inverness Caledonian Thistle, with both Alloa Athletic and Stenhousemuir losing. They've extended their lead to the top of the table to 33 points, 5 ahead of the Wasps in second, and they've got a game on hand over them as well. Hamilton, understandably, they are in a big slump at the moment, and they have got much, much, much bigger things to worry about than losing to Cali Thistle. On Tuesday evening, it was announced the club had been given a 9-point deduction, and this is on top of the 6-point deduction they received in October after paying trialists and fielding amateur players while under embargo. The statement posted on the SPFL website said, SPFL rules require all member clubs to hold a bronze-level Scottish FA club licence at the 31st of March. Hamilton were given multiple extensions to this date to comply, but have failed to do so, which led to disciplinary proceedings. The club admitting breaching these rules following the award by the Scottish FA of an entry-level licence due to the club's accounts being unaudited. So that's now 30 points deducted across 3 separate penalties between April and now. This latest sanction has seen them drop to 8th place with just 13 points. 2 teams that are heading in very different directions. I suppose this is less about the match on Saturday and just more the state that the clubs find themselves. Who do you want to start with first?
Inverness, I suppose. That probably makes more sense.
Very good couple of days for Inverness Caledonian Thistle, because as well as beating Hamilton Academical 4-0, they smashed Dumbarton 9-0 at the Rock on Tuesday night in a KTM Evolution Trophy match. This is a club, Shaughan, that are just really riding a crest of a wave at the moment.
Yeah, it's funny. I remember right back at the start of the season, when we discussed Inverness, we wondered about their kind of forward options, their ability to maybe open sides up in League One. However, the fact that they brought in Alfie Babbage, and because I was a player, we wondered that it felt like they were putting their eggs in the Alfie Babbage basket. It's the fact that they've brought him in, not really used him as such, but he's either played it wide or maybe come off the bench. They played against Dumbarton and scored 4. It just feels like if there was any doubt, and I don't think there was, but if there was any doubt, then Saturday dispelled any situation that anybody could kind of challenge Inverness for the League One title. They have 2-3 really good forwards, a really good defensive line, midfield wise, nobody can cope against them. And as much as maybe on any single day, teams can cope against them, but not over a kind of 36 game season. So no, I thought Saturday was confirmation that Inverness will win League One.
No, I can't really dispute that. It was, the last 10 times the teams played one another, it was 3-1 it finished to Hamilton at Broadwood, and that was very much a blip over the course of the season. I think that was just one of the very few games where Cali Thistle just didn't really get going and were duly punished. This one they were going after about just a couple of minutes where Mitchell Robertson scored, but some of the goals they scored, that just to highlight the quality they had. See the second goal. You could see that, from watching the highlights, you could see that about 10 seconds before the ball's in the back of the net. You know about where Callum McLeod's got the ball at right back and he's driving forward with it, and nobody's really coming over to put a bit of pressure on it, but you can see Zimba to start making that run between the centre backs and getting slipped in. Really, really good run. And yeah, you can maybe say the Hamilton defenders are a wee bit slow to react to his movement, and it is a really good finish, but just a great goal. And the fourth goal as well of Billy Mackay, you've got the benefit, again, going by the highlights, of just being able to watch his movement inside the penalty box. The ball takes a little bit of time. It's worked out onto the right-hand side, and it takes a wee bit of time before it gets hooked into the area for Mackay to finish. His movement's absolutely superb. Really, really good. He just kind of stands around, just hanging on the defender. And I'm going to use the Velociraptor from Jurassic Park thing, just where you think you've got him, then all of a sudden, he's away, and that's him able to come round and hook the ball into the net. I was really impressed by him, but that's that degree of nous and experience that he gives you. We're talking about their attacking options. It's defence. that's just that very few people have breached it. 11 clean sheets in 16 league matches. Just the guys like David Devine and, beg your pardon, David Devine, Danny Devine and Remy Savage is just such a secure unit. Very few teams will be able to get the better of those two. And if they do, Ross Munro, I thought that would be the weak spot for Cali Thistle at the start of the season. This sort of untested goalkeeper. He's been fine. Absolutely zero complaints with Ross Munro. So it just feels like a team that are just in a very, very good place.
Yeah, totally. And I think Frank McEwen said something about them maybe even being a kind of lower Premiership team. I'd have to go back and have a look.
I know he did. That was one of those. He was like, hold your horses here, Frank.
But I must, in fairness, I've not actually listened to his interview after the 9-0 game. But yes, there is something very impressive about how Inverness have went about their business in League One this season. Even though people have complimented them, I'm not entirely sure they're as good as, say, Falkirk, for example, from last season. But regardless, you're talking about Ross Munro, who I didn't think was a particularly a great goalkeeper, but the fact that they have kept attacks at arm's length and Ross Munro hasn't really been an issue. Like they've been fantastic this season.
And Kelleher said in his post-match interview, he just kept saying the word delighted over and over again, and quite right. But just that he's now at the stage there where they've got options coming off the bench. They're just strong in every position in the team. He was saying that we don't really need to use a January transfer window because everyone's doing well. And you build on that from the game against Dumbarton on Tuesday night. They were able to make a number of changes. And I think that the 9-0, I think that's actually, and I say this is a bad thing, not a bad thing, but it's given Kelleher a headache now, because they're like, you know, when you kind of give the fringe players a shot and you kind of see who's shown up well in this game, who hasn't. Everyone showed up well in that game. So when they've got Stenhousemuir at the weekend, Jesus Christ, he's got a wealth of options that he can call upon to attack. Stenhousemuir are a decent side as well. You know, the 3-0 defeat at Montrose at the weekend notwithstanding. But they just have so many different ways to hurt you. And if they can't hurt you, you're going to have some job trying to hurt them because they're just so stingy at the back. I know they're running it. Another thing I was going to say as well, I know they're effectively just like a championship side, a level down, and they're perhaps spending their way into back to the second tier. But it feels like it's money well spent at the moment. I think there's a really good feeling around the place, both in terms of like the manager, the players, the supporters, and I think they'll certainly go into next season's championship a far better side than the one that left.
Yeah, no, totally. But I think you also have to remember as well that I think for the last, whatever it's kind of couple of months or so, we've complimented Inverness, but they've kind of stumbled their way. Like they've played okay. They've won a lot of games by a kind of goal or two. So, it's not as if on their day that Stenny, for example, couldn't give them a game.
Yeah. I mean, Stenny did beat them, actually, up
exactly.
in Inverness. I mean, there's a wee bit of luck involved in that, but nevertheless, Stenhousemuir still beat them. So, yeah, they're not impervious. You know, I don't think it's not like it's like 2010 Barcelona that have suddenly been jettisoned into Scottish League One. But they're a hard side to beat, and they'll take some stopping. I mean, I don't know if you saw the 9-0 game or the goals from the 9-0 game against Dumbarton from Tuesday.
I have not seen the goals, no.
Ruthless. That's how you describe them. Ruthless means some of Dumbarton's defending is quite ropey. People just not being as aggressive or just being a wee bit short in terms of stopping shots coming in or marking people or picking up people in the box. But nevertheless, just really impressive. All guys that are just desperate because they want first team football. They just want to be playing on a regular basis.
But was it also not essentially Dumbarton's youngsters versus Inverness's first team?
Yeah, well, I mean, it was. I think what did I read in Pie and Bovril? They'd made something like 7 changes from the side that had beaten East Kilbride at the weekend. So yeah, there were changes, but I don't think that matters. 9-0. 9-0 is just a scoreline. I mean, we talked about the 6-0 one earlier between Raith Rovers and Ross County. You never see 9-0. I mean, I was sitting, Shaughan, with my phone up, just with the live score app, watching the seconds tick away, hoping that Inverness Caledonian Thistle got a 10. I've yet to see a 10. Remember when Celtic a couple of years ago played Dundee United and they beat them 9-0 and they had like 15 minutes to get a 10th and they didn't? Furious with this as well. That when they scored, they were 7-0 up at half time, then effectively took the foot off the accelerator. No, keep on going. Keep on going. But if Inverness Caledonian Thistle are basically just within, it's a matter of time before they're heading into the Championship. I think it can only be a matter of time before Hamilton Accies are heading in a very, very different direction. I mean, that 9-point deduction that came for not having the bronze licence, it was announced on LinkedIn, I think over the weekend, certainly or last week, that their wages for November's payroll had been covered by a payday loans company. The Funding Globe had posted on LinkedIn about a last-minute rescue package for the football club, which, when you hear about payday loans, I think in any circumstances, that's always something you're just like, oh, I don't know if you should be using it, because ultimately it's going to cost you a lot more in the long run. But that's just like on an individual basis. What if it's an actual football team that are using them? And then subsequently, Jonathan Towers, who is from the Funding Globe, he's now become a director at the club. Scared, terrified. There's something not right there.
I can't see how it goes well here. So like they've funded their wages for December. Now, like, what is it? Like what's in it for them? Mm-hmm. Bear in mind they're a kind of payday loan company, so they'll be applying a kind of large percentage in terms of how you pay that back. So, like, is Johnny Towers and his daft name, has he always been keen to get into Scottish football? I'm not entirely sure. It's impossible to see how this goes well. But listen, I could be wrong. But I am, as I have been for about 18 months, I am concerned for Hamilton.
There's just something, just payday loans. It's a bad situation. That just feels like you're making it even worse. It's like short-term gain for just long-term badness. I just can't see it ending well, and I don't know what does it come to. What's the security they've got on this loan? Is it Ollie Shaw? Probably the best asset. Is he going to have to start working for the Funding Globe now? He basically gets transferred away from Hamilton Football Club, has to do admin in the office. I don't know what the security is. And then they've got that points deduction. And, you know, last week when we spoke about Accies, we said that it was expected they would go into administration very soon. That comes with a 15-point penalty with it as well. And I saw it'd be good to get your thoughts on this, but people were saying, like, what's the point in continuing to punish them? You know, like that stop, he's already dead. When the crusty burglar is getting his head kicked in by Homer Simpson dressed as a clown. It's at what point do you stop punishing Hamilton? Or are you like, well, no, you've broken these rules. These are the punishments that come. It isn't just like, there's no cut-off period where you breach 3 rules, you get your 4th one free. You know, there's a consequence that comes with going into administration. If that happens, as things stand, they'd be in -2. They would sink to the bottom of the table and surely would be relegated off the back of that. You've got January coming up. I'm going to imagine guys like Ollie Shaw, Scott Robinson, Kevin O'Hara, Tony Gallagher, these guys will be on the phone to their agent. They might have moves lined up already to get them away from the club. I'm frightened. I'm really, really worried for them.
It's funny, I've seen a couple of comments to say, okay, well, even if they go into admin, get another 15-point deduction, they'll be fine because they have like a kind of decent squad. But actually, if that was the case, surely everybody, like if you've just mentioned in terms of like Shaw and O'Hara and Gallagher, they must move on at that point. And suddenly, like, Hamilton might be left with the team that they lined up at Starts Park a couple of weeks ago, which is just a bunch of youngsters who were trying their heart out, but ultimately weren't good enough. So if that's what they're left with, a team trying to get away out of relegation trouble that is a bunch of whatever under 18s, then good luck to them. But I as we've said for the entire season, I don't see anything positive happening from Hamilton Accies.
No, I think it was as well Darry McKinnon's post-match interview where he was talking about the off-field stuff has given the players an out. because it's a wee excuse that if you're not really on it because you're worried about it. But he's saying that the players have to take responsibility for what happens on the pitch. And he said, I'll give him this one this week, but I can't accept that. And I suppose he's right when you just see like the calibre of the goals that they're losing, people not tracking other people, like losing their men inside the penalty box. All just really scruffy stuff.
But see if you don't know where the wages are coming from. So see if you don't know if you're going to get paid on Friday and your team might go into administration or liquidation a week or two later, and you might need to find another club in January. I can understand why you wouldn't necessarily give it your all. Like, so I wouldn't necessarily criticise players for not necessarily giving it their all in that scenario.
Suppose when I'm thinking about when I play five-a-side football, if I've got stuff that's going on personally and I'm not picking up my man, hey, Telfer, you let that boy run off you. I got a row off my boss and I'm in the dumps for it. You fucking give yourself a shake. No, I'm being facetious. I know exactly what you mean. I hope the issue can be resolved, but we seem to see that every time we talk about Hamilton. It's like, where do you go? So, like, they're by the grace of God. Inverness Caledonian Thistle in a similar position. At least they had a local businessman who's very wealthy that actually loves the club and wants them to thrive, rather than people that are funding Globe.
Listen, I'm sure Johnny Towers has as much sympathy towards Hamilton as Alan Savage did to Inverness.
Imagine he did. Imagine a lifelong Hamilton fan done good. But they've got a tough game coming up, Shaughan. Hamilton Accies versus Alloa Athletic.
I suspect that Alloa will have an away win.
And Stenhousemuir versus Inverness Caledonian Thistle.
There was an interesting Q&A on Tuesday night here. I don't know how that panned out in terms of Stenny. However, I'll go for an Inverness win.
Yeah, just before the Q&A, there was a guy on Pie and Bovril who wrote a particularly nasty, a Montrose supporter who wrote a particularly nasty comment about me. Called me a lovey amongst other things. Yeah, and I thought, you know what, I'm going to bide my time. I'm going to bide my time with him because I don't want to just jump in. And so I was away for the weekend. I was in Cameron House staying overnight with my girlfriend. And I would never normally have done this, but I thought, I'm going to take my laptop with me and I'm going to log into Pie and Bovril at the full-time whistle and they're like, I'll fucking get it right up you. But then when we were driving to the hotel, we had the radio on and they're getting the updates and open all mics. And it's like there's a first goal, a second goal, and I get to the hotel, it's a third goal. The laptop very much stayed in my case for the evening. I didn't get the chance to use it.
So what were you going to say to him?
Get it right up, you honking big cunt. I just unfortunately didn't get the chance. So that's lost like tears in rain. But the Q&A you mentioned, Shaughan, yeah, that took place on Monday. The club, they had a Q&A about, was it a while ago? Was it about the start of the calendar year, April, May time? They had a Q&A back then and they were talking about the club's financial situation, and they'd said at that point they were hoping the club would be on an even keel coming into the end of this season, but that doesn't look like it's going to be the case. It's effectively directors' loans that are still like keeping the club going. And they're hopeful that a good run in the Scottish Cup and the KDM Evolution Trophy will help balance the books. Unfortunately, you don't get your money until you get knocked out the competition. So Stenhousemuir will be due for a decent wee windfall, but it won't come later on. And on top of that, the KDM Evolution Trophy, we were drawn with Stirling Albion away in the next round, which is quite presentable. So I think they've got a decent chance of getting quite far into the competition. And in the Scottish Cup, Greenock Morton at home. So that's not the toughest. It could have been better, but certainly could have been a lot worse. The big question was about just the changes at boardroom level, which is something a lot of fans were worried about. And the answers weren't particularly satisfactory. I would say that they were quite party political. You describe that, like a politician on debate night getting asked a tough question and sort of like answering it but not answering it. And they were asked twice about the same thing and the same answer was given. But I do appreciate that wasn't really the forum to get into the weeds about interboard relationships. which was, I do appreciate it, but was frustrating at the same time. But the chairman reiterated his commitment to the club. So I feel like you can only take him by his word. If you take him by his word, we're in safe hands for the time being, which is good. But hopefully, knock out Greenock Morton, Rangers away, beat them, Celtic away, beat them, get to Hampden, and that'll be us. Millionaires, back to our best. Back to our best.
Well, that sounds tentatively okay, I suppose.
Yeah, it was. Tentatively okay is the best way to describe it. We came out afterwards, and my friends and I were having a bit of debrief in the car park just outside the main gates to get into Oco View, and nobody was scunnered. You know, I've come away from these things before. Remember going back to, I think it was 2007, we'd won with Campbell Money, who was the manager at the time. And you know, you're supposed to, this is pre-season, everyone's supposed to get really hyped up for the year ahead. I came out there feeling miserable, thinking we're going to be absolutely dreadful. And you know what? We had an absolutely terrible season, the 2007-2008 season. But this one, I think most people came out and they're just like, yeah, that could have been worse, but it could have been a lot better.
Okay. Well, that doesn't sound too bad. Tentatively okay.
Tentatively okay. Yes, we'll go with that. Now, we will drop into League Two, and seeing as we're already talking about SPFL teams for the Highlands, let's make it 3 for 3, and let's talk about Elgin City 1, Stranraer 2. Hearts loanee Dom Plank put the Blues ahead just before half-time. Absolutely stunning goal this as well, but it was cancelled out by Jack Murray on the hour mark. City captain Russell Dingwall was sent off shortly afterwards in controversial circumstances, and it looked as though his team would hold on for a point. But Scott Ruff bundled home the winner in injury time. Well worth the 538-mile round trip for the 30 fans that travelled up. Elgin have fallen into 4th place. Their 8-game unbeaten run in all competitions has come to a head, and they have been leapfrogged by Stranraer. They're on 21 points, and Chris Aitken's team are an absolute tear at the moment. 5 matches they have won in all competitions. And the team were on their Christmas night out in Tenerife, of all places, over the weekend. And I'm sure Scott Ruff made their time over there that little bit better. Shaughan, can I very kindly ask you what you thought of Elgin City 1, Stranraer 2?
I mean, it didn't look like the best game of all time. It looked like it was played in difficult circumstances. I know Alan Hale, brackets left, said that the red card had an effect on the game. It's difficult to argue otherwise. Regardless, the fact that Stranraer were able to kind of eke out a last minute win, hard to grudge them that. I thought they probably had the better of the game over the 90 minutes, and the run that they're on is exceptional. I did enjoy Chris Aitken saying that it was going to be a good kind of bus journey home, while there was already felt like a kind of disco behind them when he was getting interviewed. It was very, very good. Very, very good.
That's something I noticed as well. I actually couldn't quite hear what Chris Aitken was saying because all this really aggressive dance music was coming in from the room there. It felt as though as well that he just wanted the interview wrapped up as quickly as possible so he could get a lager and just head back down the road and get on the plane over to Tenerife. No, the red card, might as well come on and talk about that, because that's something that certainly Alan Hale, brackets left, was his post-match interview was, I'd say, dominated by in terms of it. And the way the interview was quite funny. There's obviously something being edited out. You'll have noticed there was a wee dissolve that was put in at one point midway through his speaking, and then it just cuts midway through a sentence to a sort of an alternative angle of Russell Dingwall's challenge. I actually thought the alternative angle looked worse than it did on the... Yeah. So you watched Stranraer's highlights?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's excellent as always. And I remember at the time thinking, when I watched him, I had to go back and watch it like a load of times to actually see where it was bad. It didn't look like it was a yellow card. But then we actually see from the other side, I think the referee might have been, maybe not a red card, but it was definitely something that deserved censure.
So that's exactly what I thought. So like Dingwall, like Dom Plank kind of strides away and Dingwall like kind of slides in. So he jumped. I think it was a slide shot. I actually think he was off the ground a wee bit. So his kind of right leg goes past Plank's trailing leg, and then but it's his left leg kind of comes in, so it's almost like it's like a kind of pincer manoeuvre. And I suppose the fact that it's like he kind of clamps his ankle, and then the fact that Plank, the fact that he kind of gives you a bit of a scream, and I'm not saying that he made the most of it, but the fact that he goes down, there is very much a noise. I didn't think it was a red card, but I also didn't think it was I didn't think it was a good challenge in general.
No, there's a funny bit as well. The Stranraer defender Jordan Stewart, when the referee pulls out the red card, he puts his hand over his mouth, like, oh my God, like he's almost in disbelief. I think is it Big Lewis Reid, the Stranraer captain, sort of comes round and puts his arm round Dingwall and like tries to apologise for him. I'd say that would they have lost that match had Dingwall been on? I don't know. There was a chance. It didn't make it onto the highlights, but it's something that Alan Hale Brackett's left mentions, that he thought his team were better with 10 men than 11. And he mentioned about Kane Hester missing a good chance on 1-on-1, which didn't make it into Stranraer's highlights. And on top of that, it was the winning goal came. It wasn't as if Stranraer dragged them out of position. You know, it wasn't like it was a really clever passage of play with loads of 1-2s and balls around the corner, or whatever. It was just they failed to deal with a free kick into the box. So it was like bad defending, and on top of that as well, it took Scott Rough like 2 bites to actually get the ball over the line, and on top of that, the ball was moving over the line about 3 miles an hour.
I mean, it was just a scrappy game in general. So you're right, like maybe Elgin wouldn't have won it if they had 11 men on the pitch. Like Alan Hale, Brackett's left, did say that he felt that the momentum was swinging back towards his team, and maybe that's a very valid point. But regardless, it was a poor game, scrappy, and ultimately Elgin didn't defend well enough. A set piece in the 91st minute or whatever it was.
Yeah, I've got to say though that Dom Plank's goal to open the scoring, just an outstanding goal. I think there's a lot of good goals we've spoken about in this podcast. I think this might have been the best of them. Just a brilliant run from Danny McManus through the middle of the park, slips in Plank, and Plank drives into the box and sort of just drops the shoulder onto his right foot and then slams it into the net. It's a really, really good goal. Really good goal.
Plank seems really good. So I think Chris Aitken might actually suggested that wasn't one of his better games, which I can kind of understand, because if it was a kind of 12 or 13 minute highlights package, he didn't necessarily stick out other than the goal and the red card. But I think based on the last 4 or 5 weeks, there has been so many kind of moments where Stranraer have almost scored or got a good ball into the box or somebody has kind of dribbled around 2 or 3 players. And it's been Plank that's kind of been I just get the impression that if you're a Stranraer fan, Plank is kind of getting you off your seat. Like I like watching him, certainly.
I think there's a couple of boys. There's a couple of boys. There's another boy at Stranraer, James Dolan. I say a couple of boys, Plank and Dolan, are the guys that are sort of like good dribblers and the guys that get you off your seat. But I thought it was a good goal, and the times that I've seen Plank, certainly latterly, having been paying a bit more attention to Stranraer's highlights now since they've been winning games, he is someone that has been standing out, and it's just even his name. I know that sounds like a daft thing to say, but the surname Plank, I don't think it's something that I've come across. You know, I've come across the surname Woods before, and I've come across the surname Plank or Timber. There's boy Jury and Timber at Arsenal, but regardless, he does look like someone who just quite a creative player. I think that maybe if he wants to make it at Hearts, he probably needs to be a bit less selfish with the ball. You know, he can kind of dribble up dark alleys and maybe work a wee bit harder off the ball. But in terms of what he's bringing to the team at the moment, he's doing very well. You got to say though, I mean, as brilliant as Stranraer's opening goal was, Elgin City's equaliser, that was
not great.
Not great from a Stranraer perspective. I mean, it must be like the cheapest corner I think I've seen anyone concede all season.
Was it Scott Rough that played it back? But he played it back like so far away from Josh Lane
Aye, and jokingly shouting, "How's your touch?" as the as the goalkeeper tries to bring under control.
And then Josh Lane almost gets to it. And I will say, like, I think Josh Lane is a very good young goalkeeper. But there's a few times this season where, like, there's a delivery, like, into the 6-yard box, and it feels like he's not really willing to go for it. And that seemed to occur again on Saturday.
I'll be honest and say, not being Josh Lane hasn't stood out quite as much as he might have done last year. But I don't know if that's because Stranraer are better at the moment than they were last year, and so it's their outfield players are they're not as reliant on him as they might have been last season. But it was a bad touch, and the corner's badly dealt. I think that Jack Murray, he attacks the ball like someone poking their head outside the door to check in the weather. You know, just a sort of wee glance, and the ball's off his forehead and into the net. But I suppose that this game as well, it wasn't a high quality game, but these are the kind of matches that, particularly if you're the away team, winning. Like, see, I remember an interview Matty Aitken gave earlier in the season, the Stenhousemuir striker, was talking about they beat Cove Rangers 1-0, and he scored the penalty to win the game. It was a pretty shit game of football. But he said in his post-match interview afterwards, sometimes it's more satisfying to win these kind of games. See the games that you've got to, like, really dig in and work really hard for, and nobody plays well, but everyone's absolutely grafting. They can be more satisfying to win than games when you win like 3, 4, 5-0, 6-0, 9-0, you know, games like that. So I wonder if, I think it might have been the same for Stranraer, like, to the circumstances they won this game, and like we talked about the noise coming out of the dressing room, the fact they were all in Tenerife over the rest of the weekend. Brilliant. Just great stuff. And I don't think it's Stranraer in a really good place at the moment. You know, 5 consecutive wins is tremendous. And the fact that one of the wins was against, like, a team like East Kilbride, who they've traditionally, like, struggled against this season. The fact that you go up to Elgin and beat them 2-1. I'd say they're in a really, really good place. And although Elgin lost, I don't think this points to a wider trend. I just think it's sort of one of those games where it could have gone either way. You miss chances, you lose a shitey goal at the end, the conditions are bad, you've got a man sent off, you're not happy about it. You know, I wouldn't be too concerned if I was Alan Hale.
Yeah, totally, because I suppose the form teams are Clyde, Elgin and Stranraer. And I suppose Stranraer could take 3 points from it, and the fact that they are having a disco before going to Tenerife. I suppose what Elgin could take from it was, as Alan Hale said, there was very little in the game. If it hadn't been for a red card, maybe they would have managed to turn the game around. Difficult to disagree with that. But they've been very good now for 2 or 3 months. So I wouldn't necessarily I wouldn't necessarily say there's a black mark against them, I suppose.
No, you're right. The Elgin are travelling to Edinburgh to take on the Spartans next.
I will go for it's weird, like Spartans, there's much in the top 2 that it feels like they've been really poor recently. I will go for a 1-0 draw.
Yeah, I fancy a draw for this one as well. Certainly a draw or Elgin. That's really hedging my bets. There's 3 potential outcomes. Can I pick 2 of those 3 outcomes? I don't think Spartans will win. I'll say that. I don't think the Spartans will win. The other game, Shaughan, it's Stranraer versus Dumbarton.
Dumbarton are more hot and cold than Stranraer. I'll go for a home win, Stranraer.
I wonder, I watched Frank McEwen's post-match interview after the East Kilbride game, and I thought he came across normal. But, you know, after he introduced himself with that, like, sort of weird interview after they lost to Edinburgh City, he came across as normal, and it's a great result. Similar to what I said about the Stranraer going up to Elgin and beating them. The fact that you take on the league leaders at the Rock, the conditions looked absolutely minging. As I mentioned, they're driving to. Wasn't a million miles away from Dumbarton on Saturday when I was driving up to Cameron House. It was horrible, absolutely horrible there. So to play football in that is minging. And to dig out a 2-0 win against the league leaders, you can understand what McEwen was saying when he said in his post-match interview at the Edinburgh game, the second half performance or something to work with here. They were able to build on and improve on it against East Kilbride. So I can understand he'd be delighted with that. But that 9-0 defeat to Inverness Caledonian Thistle, I wonder how much damage that's done. And what I mean by that is, I know that we said earlier about they changed the team around a little bit, and there was some guys that came in. He mentioned that there's boys that had been chapping on his door who he gave a chance to, and I think he's got a bit more of a measure of what he's got to work with after Tuesday night. It just feels like that's like 9-0. 9-0. It's such a big, like massive, like flashing scoreline that, and I know it's in the KDM Evolution Trophy. I know it's against a team that are a lot better than you, but even so, it's the kind of result that you do not see happening very often.
I honestly, I don't think it has any impact whatsoever. Genuinely, I think fans will be aware of it, and rightly so. But in terms of how he thinks about the next performance and how he picks his next team, I don't think it comes into it at all, and rightly so.
No, it's just a shame that the team that they're taking on are the most informed team in the division in Stranraer. I'd fancied Stranraer to win this one.
Yeah, probably.
Now, before we leave, Shaughan, I think we suppose really have to talk very briefly about Edinburgh City 1, Clyde 4. And I know that there'll be people rolling their eyes saying, I can't believe you're talking about Edinburgh City again. But I watched Michael McIndoe's post-match interview before seeing the highlights, and I'd never really heard him speak like this before. I mean, he really tore into his players. He threatened to replace them unless performances improved. He said, like, there's players ringing us every day asking to play for this football club. And he singled out his defenders in particular, really angry about their inability to make clearances a lot of the time. And I then going back and watching the highlights and seeing that, maybe that some of the goals they lost were just, they basically teed up rather than clearing the ball. You kind of make mistakes and you tee up Clyde to score. Just be interesting to get your thoughts on if you got the chance to watch like the highlights for this one.
Yeah, I've watched both. I suppose, like, normally when we talk about Michael McIndoe, we talk about him being quite, is it a brilliant? Would that be the word?
Yeah, I'd say so.
Yeah, but that was not the case on at the weekend at all. He was quite, maybe as low an ebb as I've seen him. He talks about the fact that I did think it was quite interesting. He was asked about like, why is it that, like, why do you defend so poorly? And I'd like to say, is it to do with confidence? Is it to do with whatever it was? And I think a lot of managers in that instance might have said, well, it's to do with kind of individual errors. And Michael McIndoe just said, no, it's to do with quality. And I thought that was quite interesting. He said, no, it just ultimately, it's just to do with quality. Now, like, this is a team last season that kept so many clean sheets, but he is very much saying this season that he is ultimately fed up. Now, like, he was kind of saying that that Edinburgh that have loads of players that are contacted them that they want to play with Edinburgh. That's cool. Like, if that's the case, I mean, I don't know how League 2 football works. If agents are contacting you week in, week out saying, my defender wants to play with you. If that's the case, then cool. I do wonder how ultimately ultimately saying that your defence isn't very good. I'm interested to see how, if they're still with you in February, March, how that works, because he wasn't very complimentary about them on Saturday.
No, I mean, going hearing the interview and going by the highlights, I think the first, third and fourth goals all came from like bad defending in terms of not clearing. Now, a bit of sympathy for the first goal. I think I couldn't quite see who fluffs the clearance. It goes right to Kyle Fleming. It's a brilliant shot. Like, just kind of actually similar to Jai Rose in a way, where the ball breaks to him and it's just arrowed into the corner. Mark Weir's got no chance. But the third and fourth goals, I think it's like Lewis MacArthur mucking up a clearance. The fourth goal, it's Jack Duncan mucking up a clearance. And it's just, I'm not sure. I can understand like McIndoe maybe being like angry because he was sent off during the match.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure if he was still hipped up from that. It's just that it's a side to him we haven't seen. You know, as scholars who have been following him for like the past 2 years and like watching pretty much every we were pouring over every post-match interview like scholars pouring over the New Testament, you know. But it's just an interesting way to hear about him. And on top of that as well, I think that it's important next time we're doing a feature game, I think we have to include Clyde. Because Clyde are on a bit of a tear at the moment. That's 2 points from the top of the table, sneaking up behind the Spartans and East Kilbride. And their highlights package is really, really good. Really good. Like 30 bad dads dressed up as Santa Claus outside. There was a great bit during the commentary. I think it's Kyle Connell, the third goal. Kyle Connell, second. Commentary goes, "Rock me, mama, like a wagon wheel. 3-1 the Clyde. Love it." It was, "Rock me indeed, Graham." That was really good. And there was a great bit of play in that match. Jinky Hilton picks up the ball in the middle of the park, does like a 180-degree spin, takes three really players out of the game. Brilliant. It's like something like Tom and Jerry. It's fantastic. So we'll definitely have to cover Clyde because they look like they're a real fun team at the moment. A lot of stuff's going in their favour, and they just really have snuck up sort of discreetly behind the other sides. And I think it's now probably fair to say a 3-horse race now for the League Two title.
Yeah, probably. Because it's funny, like in terms of the top two in the division, like they're not the form teams. I suppose the form teams are third and fourth, which is Clyde and Stranraer. As much as I don't think Stranraer will have enough puff to challenge Clyde, I feel like Clyde might do. So fair play.
I hope Stranraer win it. If I had to pick any of the four teams, I hope Stranraer win it. The idea of Bang Bang Darren Lang, little Bobby Beale lifting up that trophy at the end of the year, that sounds absolutely fantastic to me. Now, Shaughan, that'll probably do us for the time being.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, I think, well, we've nothing else to offer for now, but rest assured we'll be back, probably Christmas Day, to talk about more lower league Scottish football. That's right, taking time out from seeing our families to talk about Logan Dunnicky and Marley Redfern in great detail. But if you can't wait until then, I suggest you subscribe to our Patreon subscription service where you can access hours and hours of content for as little as £2 per month. We mentioned it earlier in the show, but it really is class. Craig Fowler's put some excellent stuff up there this week, just about a number of teams that have changed their manager. So it's always good to get a lie of the land and find out where it's gone wrong. He's done one with Kilmarnock and he's done one with Ross County, as we mentioned. So do get in on that. Shaughan, goodbye.
Goodbye.
And you, the listener, goodbye, and enjoy your football. But unlike the Dumbarton and East Kilbride players who took part in a very bad-tempered match on Saturday with no less than 3 flare-ups, please do so respectfully. Thank you.